All right. It is 3 p.m. Eastern time, noon on the Pacific Coast. Welcome to this BlueStamp live session. Want to start out by saying thank you so much to BlueStamp and especially Brianna, the Bay Area director, for having me join and speak with you guys. Really happy to be here. Just want to say at the beginning here that Brianna will be in the chat, kind of moderating for any questions. So please feel free to ask questions. I will try and answer as many as I can. There she is right now. So quick background. My name is Rishav, if you don't know. I'm actually both a former student of BlueStamp as well as an instructor. So I was a student in 2016 in New York. My main project, if you were wondering, and if you're familiar with how BlueStamp works, was the RC hovercraft. And then I returned last summer in Palo Alto, actually, as an instructor, which was a ton of fun. Just some brief background on kind of how I got into engineering. So I think, like a lot of you guys, I really enjoyed building things when I was younger. So played a lot with Legos. I think if I go into my attic right now, I can find a lot of Lego sets. So that was definitely kind of the first indication. And afterwards, it was actually cars that really caught my attention. So I don't know if you can kind of see my shelf behind me is it's just absolutely covered in cars. You can't see all of them because it just goes pretty deep, but cars have kind of been my entire life for the longest time. And in order to get into that industry, I really pursued engineering. I enjoyed math and sciences in school. And when I got to high school, tried to take as many engineering specific courses as well as any AP sciences that I could. The final kind of nail in the coffin for me going into engineering was actually BlueStamp engineering. So I went in as a rising junior, and that very quickly, I think throughout that process, helped me realize that yes, engineering is 100% for me. So I guess kind of after that, you kind of get into the college application process, which I think a lot of you guys are either getting involved in right now. So, taking your SATs, ACTs, doing your applications. It's a little bit early for some applications, but something that I think a lot of people worry about is the whole college application process. And I think the first bit of advice that I can tell you is, you might have this idea in your head of what is the perfect college for you. But the truth is you're not going to really know until you spent a year or two there. And I was definitely in that boat where I thought there was, one or two colleges that were absolutely perfect for me. I actually didn't end up going to either of those two colleges. And the college that I'm at right now has given me amazing opportunities and has been really good for my learning as a whole. So the number one thing to remember in the whole college application process is that you will end up where you're meant to. And I think that's something that a lot of people kind of forget in the whole kind of chaos of writing apps and taking all of the exams. Another thing that's pretty important is you shouldn't worry too much. If you are, not top of your class in high school, I was far from that in my high school. That doesn't immediately make you ineligible for engineering. Engineers are passionate about what they do. So if you have a passion for doing math and science, for solving problems, for building things, engineering is absolutely the right path for you. So if you ever are second guessing yourself, that's the main thing to remember is do you enjoy doing this? Do you enjoy looking at a problem and solving it from a bunch of different angles with certain constraints? If that's you, then 100% stay on track for engineering. When you are going through the college application process, I think the big thing, if it's possible, and if your school offers it, is to actually try and get as many high-level math and science courses as you can. So do AP Physics if your school offers it, AP Calculus. These are really important to kind of have. You'll end up taking these similar classes anyways in high school, or in college. So it actually gives you a very good basis, even if you do have to retake the same courses when you do start up. Once you get into college is where things kind of pick up. I think I don't think I'm alone in saying that. I think in high school, a lot of people don't have as many options as they would hope to. I think it varies from school to school, but for me at least, there was very few engineering-focused classes at my high school. We did actually have the PLTW program, if you're familiar with that, which gives you a lot of introductions to engineering, and I was extremely thankful for having that program at my disposal. But outside of that, it was very difficult to find even like-minded individuals who are into engineering. So when you do get to college, the first thing I think you'll really appreciate is just how focused you can be on your particular area of interest. So like I had said at the beginning, I'm super interested in cars. And so straight away, if you're applying to schools and you're looking at programs, look at things, for me, if you're also into cars, look into things like the Formula SAE programs. That's something that I've really gotten involved with over the years. And it really gets you involved in, design, manufacturing. There's a lot of other teams. There's, eco cars. There are first robotic teams, or next steps up from first robotic teams, as those are high school based. So there's a lot of options, and I think a huge thing in picking schools is finding the right program that you'd like to do. As for once you get into school, you've kind of done your freshman year. A lot of the time, you'll kind of have a fixed schedule there, and then beyond, you can kind of start deciding things to do. You kind of start thinking about internships and jobs, and that's hopefully what I can answer questions about here. So I was actually fortunate after freshman year to get two jobs, actually. So one of them was returning to BlueStamp and working as an instructor. But the second was in the fall afterwards, where I actually went and worked for GE Aviation. And this, I think there might be some misconceptions where, you have to do a lot of cold calling and sending out your applications. And while there is some of that, that entire application process for getting that job went on at my school through my career services. So most schools, if not all of them, will have some kind of engineering specific career fair. And you should absolutely take advantage of this. These resources are here for you. And at these career fairs, print out 20, 30 copies of your resumes and walk around the floor and talk to as many people as you can, because there could also be companies that you're not even super familiar with going in, and you find out that they actually have a culture, or they have a goal that is very much aligned with yours. We do have a question. What if my school doesn't have a robotics team? That's a great question. So if we're talking high school, I think first of all, it's never too difficult to actually start a team. So if you are passionate and you have some other like-minded individuals as yourself, go to a faculty member. Math or science typically is best, who also shares a similar passion and would be willing to advise you guys. There are things like Science Olympiad, first robotics, like I had mentioned. There's I think Formula One in schools is another thing that comes to mind. So there's a lot of high school oriented programs actually that are popping up now that are giving people a lot of great opportunities in high school to kind of get a jump start on their careers. So if you don't have something available, I would, if you're a driven individual, which I hope you all are, and I believe you all are, look into potentially starting that up. And that's also something that goes really well on your resume when you are applying to colleges, is that you kind of started up this club, you started up something at your school that will hopefully continue on for years. Now, if you aren't really able to find things within your school or other people within your school, look into your community. So for me, yeah, exactly. So reach out to Brianna if you have any questions about starting teams, because it's really not, I think, people think it's a much larger task than it actually is, but it really isn't. But if you don't have a team in your school, or you don't have people in your school that are also interested in doing a robotics team, look around in surrounding towns, because where I am, the town right next to us actually has a massive makerspace in the public library, which a lot of people take advantage of, especially in high school. I know, if you're in the Bay Area, I mean, there's countless opportunities. With how many startups are there, or any of that. So, there will be like-minded individuals around you. It might just take a little bit of searching. So you might not necessarily find them within your school, but you will find them within your community. And so make sure that you're use the internet. It's a amazing tool. Kind of see what's around you. You can find a lot of these clubs that aren't even associated with any particular school, and function as their own bodies. Another question I have here: how can a high school student get an internship? And this one's actually pretty interesting, because it's actually it's surprisingly difficult, at least from my personal experience, to find an internship as a high schooler. I think people are a little bit more tentative because you don't have experience. So the first thing I would suggest is that there's no such thing as bad experience, especially if you're doing a high school internship. I actually ended up, my particular high school for seniors has a program where after you finish your AP exams, you actually, in the break between AP exams and graduation, so about a month and a half, go out and do an internship with a local business. So I actually did my internship with a startup focusing on B Corporation. So that's kind of it's a sustainability measure for businesses. And so we kind of acted as a consulting firm. And this had nothing to do with engineering, but it was really good experience that I actually kept on my resume up until this past year, because it showed that, I understood how small businesses function. And you were able to adapt to a bunch of different scenarios, because especially if you are in a small business, you're not just doing one particular task, you're doing 5 or 6 different things each day. And I think that's a really important thing. So if you do have an internship program at your high school, take full advantage of that. And a lot of high schools have companies that they work with to get students opportunities while they're still in high school. If you don't have that, reach out to some local businesses. Honestly, try and do honestly anything. So small businesses, I think, are personally my best recommendation, especially when you don't have a lot of experience, just because you get a hand in trying to do a lot of different things. So hopefully there are people like you. Hopefully there are people watching this who are not current BlueStamp students or are interested in the BlueStamp engineering program. So what I do want to say is, however you ended up finding BlueStamp, I think my mom walked into to my room one day and said, "Hi, I found this really interesting looking program online. Why don't we send in an application?" And I looked at it, and it looked amazing. And if you're like that, you found BlueStamp and you are looking to apply to it, and wondering, are you do you have enough qualifications? I came into BlueStamp with pretty much no engineering experience. I actually I took a couple of classes, but in terms of actually building something or working on a large scale project, I really had nothing. And so BlueStamp was my first experience. And from an academics point of view, especially my first 2 years of high school, I really struggled. So there wasn't this huge kind of there wasn't this major difficulty to get into BlueStamp, because I think the focus of BlueStamp is to take people whatever background you are. So whether you've worked on projects your entire life and you're looking for the next step in something more complex, or if you're someone like I was as a student where you had no project experience, BlueStamp is tailored to to work for each individual. And so I came out of that, and I knew and I understood the full project experience and how you start from scratch with pretty much just a loose set of instructions to a finished product, and actually trying to kind of not necessarily sell it, but presenting it to a panel of people. And I think that is one of the most crucial things that BlueStamp offers, is giving you not just project experience, but also presentation experience. Kind of after BlueStamps, being my first project, I kind of got to work on a few other things. So the big kind of things that I've worked on are, there was the hovercraft and BlueStamp, so starting pretty small. The next thing I actually worked on was with a friend that I had. So I wouldn't recommend this, but it was actually a friend that I'd met online. And we actually bought a $900 car and started the conversion of turning it into a race car. And so we are still working on it to this day, trying to put everything together and get it working. But that was the biggest project I did before I got into college. And once I got to college, like I had mentioned before, Formula SAE became kind of my life within that. So within Formula SAE, I am personally in charge of the suspension. So if you're not familiar with a car suspension, it's if you're familiar with springs and dampers, it basically is what allows you to have either a smooth or harsh ride on your car. It's what connects the wheels to the rest of the car. And so it's my job to make sure that we have a system that allows us to be as competitive as possible. So it's actually a huge scale project, despite the fact that I go to a very small school, something that I'll get into a little bit later. Our team is maybe 10 full-time members. So each individual person is actually doing a lot more to stay involved. So while my primary focus is on suspension, I have helped, our aerodynamics team lead on the dyno with our engine team, working on that and trying to get the right tune on our engine and making sure everything runs smoothly there. Working with the chassis team. You get a lot of experience in a smaller environment, is something that I've always found. And then the most recent project that I worked on, which I had mentioned, was with GE Aviation, where I actually was part of a team. So this was a much smaller cog in kind of the whole thing, but we were working on the control system for the new engine that was going to go into Apache and Black Hawk military helicopters, which was a really cool experience. Getting to kind of see these prototypes being created for something that was going to be mass produced for the highest performance helicopters there are. So yeah, I think there's a lot of experiences out there that you can take advantage of. And I think the biggest thing is just going out and finding them. Like I had said before I even got to college, I got together with a friend and started building a car. And if cars are your thing, I think you can find a lot of cars for pretty cheap and start putting them together, or do research into vehicle dynamics and things like that. That's something that I can personally speak to as I have a lot of experience with it. But even in aviation, there's a lot of ways that you can learn. I mean, again, the internet is a magnificent tool where you can honestly spend hours upon hours reading up and learning just tons of new information. So I am, I don't know if I actually mentioned it, I'm a mechanical engineer. I know it'll say that in the description, but I'm a mechanical engineer and pursued that largely because, like I had mentioned before, my interest in automotive. So mechanical engineering is probably the broadest term of engineering that there is, just because you can really do so much with it, and for instance, I mean, I could even go to my current course load where I'm working on, fluid dynamics, mechanical systems, as well as computer systems, all in 3 different classes. And these are all part of the mechanical engineering curriculum. So the thing I've always enjoyed about mechanical engineering is just how many options it gives you. Um, so I personally went into it because I'm very interested in, like I said, suspension design, chassis design. So for me, vehicle dynamics is kind of my number one area of interest, and mechanical engineering made perfect sense for that. I know BlueStamp, a lot of the focus is on electrical engineering, but you can obviously, something that I did a lot was tailor your project to be to favor a certain area of engineering that you enjoy more. So I came in interested in mechanical engineering, and I actually spent a lot of time then focusing on the body of my hovercraft, making sure that it was actually as aerodynamic as possible, or as much as I could understand at that point. There's a lot of, I mean, if you're looking into a major in engineering, there's a lot of different a lot of different disciplines that you can choose from. And what I would suggest doing is if you know right now what you want to do, as a career, look at that, look at kind of what those jobs ask for, and say, okay, this requires a civil engineering degree or an electrical engineering degree, or a biomedical engineering degree or a mechanical engineering degree. A lot of the times that's a very important place to look. If you don't know where you want to work in your career, kind of think about what interests you most. So some schools will have you declare a major instantly, and so in that case, you'll kind of look at your current course load and say, okay, I'm really interested in E&M from physics, electricity and magnetism. You're probably going to favor something more like electrical engineering. If you really enjoyed mechanics, or you enjoy mathematics and solving those problems, maybe mechanical engineering is the right way to go. If you enjoy biology, obviously biomedical engineering, and so on. So there's a lot of different options, and so even if you aren't 100% sure, you are able to go in as an undeclared major. I don't think, at least I hope, there's not any college kind of out there that right now that says, whatever you pick on your college application is what you're stuck with. You're always going to have options to change things up, to try different things. And that's going to be one of the best things you can do when you start college, is go out and try as many things as possible. That is the best kind of bit of advice that I can give, is that you can do a lot of different things. There's, like I said, I've dabbled in electrical. I've dabbled with some civil engineering things. I had to build a bridge in high school. So you do a lot of different things, and you kind of, through doing all of those, you find what you enjoy the most, and that helps you find the right career path. So I had mentioned before, I go to a pretty small school. I'm not sure too many of you have heard of it. It's a place called Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. It's a very small undergraduate institution in Indiana. So I don't know how many people doing BlueStamp are from out there, seeing as most of it's based on the coast. But it's a fantastic school. It's been ranked at the top of U.S. News undergraduate institutions for 21 years now. And what drew me to that particular school is the focus that it has on the individual. Something that I discovered pretty quickly was that, and I think a lot of people will relate to this, is in high school, I wasn't a huge fan of, my English courses or my social studies courses, just because I was very much in the mindset that, if this doesn't somehow help me towards my end goal, which is, to work in the automotive industry, why am I taking these classes? And so that's something that Rose-Hulman kind of addresses, in the sense that, yes, you're still going to have to take some electives so that you maintain, decent English and social science understanding, but a lot of it is tailored to the individual. So you have a really wide course catalog, especially for a small institution, that gives you a lot of different areas to study. You have an extremely knowledgeable staff, especially for an institution where you have no research. So there's actually no research for professors to do. So they actually come to that particular school pretty much exclusively for teaching. which is something that I really appreciated, as my sister, who also studied engineering, went to a research institution and actually ended up struggling sometimes when you had a professor who came there to do research and was only doing teaching as kind of a side hustle. So that's always a nice thing to have when you have a teacher whose main focus is teaching, as crazy as it sounds. Another thing that's really nice is just the really small environment, and I think that's going to vary from person to person. There are some big schools that can feel small, but you have an environment where, I'll walk across campus, and I'll see, say, the careers director, and they'll recognize me and they'll know my resume pretty much by heart because you have one-on-one meetings so frequently. And so they know exactly who you are and exactly how to vouch for you. So if you go to your career advisor and say, hi, I'm really interested in working for this company, they will go out of their way, because it's such a small community. They'll go out of their way to help you and say, okay, Rishav wants to go work for X company. I'm going to go email them a bunch of times with his resume, with his accomplishments, and his character that I know about him, and try and sell him to this company. You have a staff that is working entirely for you, and I think that's something that is really crucial to your college experience. You don't really want to be in a situation where in your 4 years, while you're studying your undergraduate or even in your graduate, where you have people around you that don't have your best intentions in mind. So again, these are all different things to factor when you're looking into colleges. I think, big schools have there's quite a few big schools that actually do a really good job at reducing and shrinking the engineering atmosphere and shrinking the community there. That really helps students stay involved and helps keep class sizes small and helps it be more of a one-on-one learning experience. Let's see. I guess last thing I have here, picking your first job out of college, and it was kind of something that I had alluded to a little bit. So I'm not fully there yet. I'm currently in my second year, so still have some ways to go. But it is something that I give a lot of thought to. What do you do after you finish your undergraduate degree? And that is something to think of, even when you are applying to schools in the first place, is what opportunities do you get? So obviously going to certain schools does give you the benefit of getting your foot in the door in a lot of different places, and having a name school is very helpful, in the sense that people will recognize where you're from within the industry. So that's obviously nice, but that doesn't change the fact that you can still get just about anything or any job if you do go out there and push for it yourself. When you are looking for a job, I think the first thing is to kind of look at what you enjoy doing in college. You don't want to be working in an area where you say, okay, this was my least favorite class, but this is what I'm going to end up doing because these guys had an opening. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I personally am an individual who likes to plan a lot of things out. So the way I see it is, think about, okay, what is my long-term plan? Do I want to go get a graduate degree eventually? Do I want to, settle down for the long haul, kind of find a company that I like the environment in and stay there for a really long time? There's a lot of different paths to go, and there's no one right path for any individual person. So a lot of it comes down to experimenting, and that's where the internships come in. You get 3, maybe 4 years of internship experience while you're in college, and you can try and get some in high school as well. And the best advice for that is to try different companies, try different projects, try different disciplines almost of engineering, so that you can really get a good feel for what's out there. I know countless people who have done 2 or 3 different internships and ended up working for one of those companies that they interned for because they enjoyed the environment so much. So I cannot stress enough the importance of getting an internship, because it really is the best kind of experience you can get. In a classroom, you can learn so much. You can learn so many theoretical concepts, but you learn so much more when you're out actually on the job, and doing things. And this is not me advocating for don't pay attention in school, because believe me, the stuff you do in school does come back. And there were quite a few moments during the 2 jobs I've held so far, where I actually had a lot of coursework come into play, and I recognized, like, oh, okay, I remember learning this particular concept in one of my mathematics classes, and this is how it's applied in real life. So focus on applications, especially, and and yeah, I mean, that is, I wish there was a perfect answer, I think, for people that would say, this is the best place to work, or this is what you do when you graduate. But a lot of it comes down to experimenting with, because each person is different as an individual in terms of personality, in terms of ability. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses, and you want to be in an environment that plays to your strengths, rather than some kind of compromise, or something that God forbid, plays to your weaknesses. So do your research. And if you are thinking, what can I do to boost up my resume? BlueStamp is always a great option if you're still in high school. So please, if you are interested, take a look online, see what people have done. We have students' projects fully recorded on the website, so you can see just the different kinds of things you can do. You can come up with your own projects. You can do one of the previously defined projects. I think BlueStamp is it was fantastic experience to get me into engineering, once and for all. I'd always had that interest, but you have that on your resume, you have that experience behind you, you kind of know what you want to do. And to get that experience so early on, when you're in high school, is, I think it's amazing. So once again, I would like to thank Brianna and BlueStamp for hosting this. I'd like to thank everyone who tuned in. Thank you for watching, asking questions. Hope I was able to answer them. If you do have any more questions, I will try to find a way. I guess I could leave my email address in the description below, or I can try and do that, so that you can reach out to me if you have any other questions, or if you're watching this not live. I would be more than happy to answer anything. Again, thank you to BlueStamp. You guys do an amazing job. You guys are an inspiration. Each year of students is more impressive than the last, and I've enjoyed my 2 years experience with BlueStamp, and I hope that I get to stay involved with you guys in the future. So thank you guys so much, and thank you for what you guys do for students. All right. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.